This is Money, Motivation, and Mike, and I am your host, Michael Wainwright. In charge of all the controls and the mothership is audio engineer Jason Wright. And hello to you, world. This is the show that will change your life. You can contact us at info@mx3.vip, and you can find all our content at mx3.vip or on YouTube at youtube.com/@mx3podcast. And don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit the icon bell to get notified of all of our new content. Continuing on with our Kairos subject of prison ministries and our guest, Bobby Starr, and continuing on with where we were in the last episode. Okay. So on these 42 individuals, is that all that goes through in that particular program on that 3.5 days?
On a 3.5 day weekend, we get 42 individuals.
Okay.
And we specifically ask, and I do air quotes, we ask for the worst 42 guys that they can give us.
Okay, so the prison picks them out?
Yep.
Do they have to do the Kairos program, or are they volunteered to do it?
They don't have to do it.
Okay.
There's a request form called an I-60. They can put in an I-60 to request to be involved with Kairos. Their cellmate or their buddy on the other side of the facility, we had in April, the warden put in an I-60 for one specific individual because he knew that guy could get a benefit, would definitely benefit from the program. But even after they come in on Thursday, at any point during the weekend, they can say, you know what, I don't really get it.
This is not for me.
And they don't have to come back.
I got you. Do you have, what is the ratio of that? Is there always a couple during every program?
Occasionally you'll have a guy that just doesn't show up on the first day. Usually if they come in and they do the introductions, they're inquisitive enough to come back on Friday. In April, I was the weekend leader. You can only lead one weekend at a unit.
For the history of your existence
entire time there, you can only be a weekend leader once. Of my 42 guys, after Thursday, we did the introductions. He came back Friday. Whenever we released them, he got back to his cell block. There was a situation where, and I hesitate, that there are gangs in prison.
Sure.
We all know that. This one individual had a situation where he was trying to walk away from his affiliation, and he was involved in an altercation that evening.
Okay.
And that disqualified him. He couldn't come back
to the program.
Saturday.
Okay.
So I lost one of my 42 on that weekend.
I got you.
My response that next day, whenever I found out, there were a couple of the brothers in white that saw the effect that had on me.
Yes, sir.
And it turned into a topic of conversation over the weekend.
Okay.
One of their members, one of the 42, stood up at one point during the weekend and said, look, we have to be here. We can't not get this information. That man that didn't get to come back today affected that man as a volunteer.
Right.
Visually hurt him.
Sure.
We need to be here. Those are the kind of things that make me want to go back.
Right.
And do it again.
Well, just like in your particular case, I believe you told me that you visit about every 6 to 8 weeks, and then you're there for 4 days, twice a year. So you're in and out of there, and these inmates that have been there for a decade, or because you had said that you have been going to the same place for 7 to 8 years, is that right?
Between 7 and 8 years.
Okay. They get to know you. They see your face. They know why you're there. And I'm sure that's motivation for them to want to not only be involved in the program, but to do better and become a better person. So when they're put back into civilization, they've had a lot of personal growth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the motivation part of this show for me, is trying to make people better individuals, and to get off the couch and go do something about your life, to get out of your jail cell and go do something about your life.
Right.
And I know you said that the Warren had an I-60 form, had filled one out for one inmate. I would think as long as your group, you guys, the Kairos program has been in place, that you probably have more than enough numbers that want to be a part of the program every time. Like, you don't show up and there's 35 guys there.
Oh no, there's always 42, and we have alternates in case on day one someone says, you know what, I don't want to do it. We have a guy in the wings ready to fill his position.
Okay.
If, as a matter of fact, whenever the one guy got involved in the altercation, he couldn't come back. Well, they asked me as the weekend leader, do you want to replace him? At that point, we had already bonded. His family table had already bonded enough that if I'd brought in another guy, an alternate, he would have been an outsider. They would have accepted him, but it's not. You don't get the same effect.
Yes. It wasn't brotherhood from the moment one.
And if I replace him, the first guy is not. He can't come back and go through the program because I didn't replace him. He's eligible to now reapply and come back and go through the whole weekend.
Okay. It's because I would assume the way the prison system, and this is just from assuming on watching TV, especially in a maximum security, it's not like recess where everybody goes out on the playground and plays together.
No.
And the second graders know the fifth graders.
Right.
So you may be sitting at a table with somebody you've never seen, even though both of you may have been there for 5 years.
Right.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're almost in an environment where you're with perfect strangers.
Oh yeah. Coffield is the largest prison facility in Texas. At the last count, there were just over 4,300 inmates there.
Okay. So that sounds like a lot to me.
It is there. And we actually run into problems because we get to know these guys. And then whenever I go in on a Saturday for the prayer and share meetings and stuff, I say, hey, have you seen, and I'll ask for a guy specifically by name, and I forget that they're housed on opposite sides of the facility. Mm-hmm. Those guys may not have known each other before the Kairos weekend.
One of the thoughts here before we continue with two more things that I want to touch on before we come to a close, and with whatever else your final thoughts are, is you basically get to touch 84 individuals out of 4,200. Is that the number you said? In
42 out of 30, or out of 42 out of 3,400.
Well,
4,300.
And I said 84 over a course of a year.
Oh, yes,
over a 12-month period, and you've got that many inmates in there, and half of those are going to leave and commit another crime. Hopefully not as serious as the one they did before.
Right.
So getting into another topic and another show, how is our security system, how is our prison system failing the society of the person that gets put in incarcerated?
The real answer is that when an individual breaks a law and gets imprisoned in a situation like this, the facility is responsible for their whereabouts.
Okay.
The long and short of it. We just have to know he's here. His penalty is to be imprisoned for X amount of time. There are guys you can go to college. You can get involved in different work-related fields. You can take classes and do all kinds of things. But if you don't get involved in any of those, you're just living as a prisoner in a prison for however long they say you have to be there.
And you're not getting any better.
Yes. You become institutionalized.
That's right.
There are guys who, on average, I believe it's about a 6th grade education is what you're dealing with inside prison.
Well, like I say, we're getting off on another subject. I've provoked to get off on another subject, but that's the first thing that hits me is how the Kairos program has really dropped the rate of another crime being committed by one person who just did.
We actually left the last line out on the recidivism question.
Okay.
Without Kairos, the recidivism rate is between 47 and 50%.
Right.
If they just are involved in the 3.5 day weekend, it drops to less than 30%.
Right.
If they get involved if they do the 3.5 day program and then every Saturday or on a regular basis stay involved with the prayer and share meetings that happen within the unit every Saturday, the recidivism rate drops to less than 10%.
And to me, that's incredible.
So you go from 5 out of 10 to 1 out of 10.
You would think the prison system would implement the Kairos program every day of the year, times 10.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a headache because they have to have security to get us in and out.
Sure.
There's extra sign-in sheets. There are extra people at the metal detectors because we're bringing in food and stuff. And we're in with these guys for 3.5 days. And I know it's more of a security risk to get 35 plus outside guys into a room with that many inmates.
Yes.
But the numbers don't lie. If they accept Jesus over the weekend, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather that they do the 3.5 day weekend, come to the prayer and share meetings for a couple of months, watch what the volunteers do whenever we come, watch what your other Kairos graduates do, watch the change that happens in them, and then make a decision if this is the life for you.
Well, you were talking about the risk and how it's a nuisance for the security of you guys to go in and out, all that. But what is the price to pay from going from 50 to down to, let's just say 10 by them staying involved? What's the price to pay for someone maybe finding salvation and everlasting life? I would think it would be an infinite number.
Oh yeah.
That it would be worth that. So I hate it that the prison system looks at it as probably a nuisance when our wonderful politicians of the world are not promoting it's just being a place where they need to know where you are. They're promoting correction and making a person better so when they enter the world, they're a changed man or woman.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like that is typically the case of what's going on.
And we see participants come in on a Kairos weekend. There's almost always, every 6 months, out of 42, there's almost always at least one self-proclaimed Muslim.
Okay.
And I'll use that as an example.
Uh-huh.
That may not ever accept Christ, but sees an example and an ongoing example, if they keep coming to the prayer and share meetings,
mm-hmm.
of how to be a better person.
You've been involved for 7-8 years. Obviously, I commend you for that, and being away from your family, basically two 4-day weekends a year. How does a person volunteer and get involved on that basis?
You can get on the website, kairostexas.org or kairosprisonministry.org, and there are tabs there that will lead you to the information that you need.
To the volunteer steps.
To the volunteer steps.
Okay.
Again, there's not a lot of requirements. There are, I think on our team, on average, there are at least 5 or 6 different denominations.
Okay. In your group?
In our group
okay.
alone, out of our 35-man team. Then that's funny because the inmates see it and they know that Christians argue amongst themselves.
Absolutely. The same denomination.
Yeah, the same denomination will argue.
Yes.
So they're trying to figure out how do you guys all get along? It's
called a church split.
Yeah. Well, we leave all those differences at the door. It's Father, Son, Holy Spirit is and the love of Christ is what we take into the unit.
Yeah.
That's the hope, is to share as much of that as possible.
Yes. Well, I was those who don't know my testimony, and most of the listening audience does, because I've had topics on this. So, you know, I grew up in the church and went to church 3 times a week, et cetera, et cetera. But what I have found out, that if you want to be judged and talked about, go to church, and it's probably going to happen for you. So, Baptists fighting with Baptists and Methodists and Catholics. So how can we not expect our prison inmates not to fight a little bit amongst themselves?
Right. And we specifically, we only carry 1 Bible into the unit on a 3.5-day weekend, and it stays in the chapel area. We use it to reference scripture from some of the talks, that kind of thing. But things like, I won't say anything specific, I don't guess, but all of the things that separate the denominations, we leave those at the door.
Sure. Jason, I think it's best that we don't ask what type of Bible that's carried in there. We're not going to ask if it's King James or NIV or anything like that.
We're not going to get into that, no, sir.
In our closing moments, Bobby, do you have any final thoughts or comments you'd like to make about your program?
Well, there are different ways to be involved. You can either be a volunteer, you can help financially through giving, you can be a cookie maker. Like I say, we carry in between 25 and 30,000 cookies on a 3.5-day weekend, twice a year.
Incredible.
So we use everything from our youth groups to our, the ladies group, the men's group makes cookies. Everybody at pretty much every volunteer's church gets involved with making cookies. There are some restrictions. Those are listed on the .orgs on things that we can take in there. But we do take homemade cookies.
Okay.
Nothing is store-bought.
Not to cut you off there, but just like that, if a person just wants to go home and start cooking and baking cookies and find a way to get them to y'all, they can do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic.
That easy.
Yes. That easy. Bobby, it's been a pleasure of you being on the show. This is very, very informative. I look forward to hearing about your ministry in the future. And I call it your ministry because you're involved in it. And I know it's much bigger than you or I or anybody here in our show. But your ministry and you volunteered, so it is a big part of your life, obviously, for a long time, and your wife's, etc. So we want to have you back on the show sometime in the near future and continue to talk about the results that you're getting. And a thought, you figure out how to do this with all your connections down there at FBI headquarters on getting our show down there to talk to some of these people. I don't know if that's even a possibility. Who knows?
Who knows?
Yes. Maybe Money, Motivation, and Mike need to be a volunteer before we get into that. But I'm just sitting here brainstorming and thinking as I'm listening to this stuff. But Grace, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Jason, I believe you've told me that the addresses will all be on there on our website.
That's right.
We didn't even get into the mission statement. That is obviously very important in any type of organization, but we can get that on the website as too, correct?
Yes, sir. We'll have it in the show notes on YouTube and our website.
Fantastic. Okay. Money, Motivation, and Mike. Obviously, you can always find us info at mx3.vip, and you can find all our content, including today's topics, mx3.vip, or on YouTube at youtube.com/@mx3podcast. And don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit the icon bell to get notified of all of our new content that comes out basically every Monday morning at 9 o'clock. So once again, thank you, Bobby Starr, and for everyone who has been a part of this one, continue to live your life the right way.